You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
Here we are, folks. Happy, happy, happy. 0 dark 30 as I blast out of the bunker into the night. Another long trip in front of me. I'm going to share some of my time and thoughts with you, and I appreciate you supporting this channel, the show, in America. Quite often, I think I refer to a series of items that are important. I talk about law, order, justice, constitution, and I'll talk about customs and traditions being part of our law, being part of who we are, our customs and our traditions. It defines America, and every country has its own customs and traditions that help define them. You look back at America, to our colonial beginnings as a nation, and we fought our revolution against tyranny. Not because tyranny was kind of a bothering notion, but because it was awful. And a couple of places really come to mind as having some big historical meaning. Back, 250 years ago, shit was hitting the fan big time. You had activities, battles, fighting around Fort Dixon, Ticonderoga, West Point. All of these places from back then have a meaning. There's point and purpose to it. Well, now we have West Point as a Army officer military training. West Point is huge. It has massive history with our nation, our nation's founding, the U.S. Army, the officer corps leadership. And what does any of that mean or matter if you just change names and change places and even change the history of the books? It steals from who we are to remove our country's, shall we say, signposts, guideposts, milestones, landmarks. And it's stealing from our children and our grandchildren to take these things away. So what am I talking about? Just another massive step towards, how do I say, some very uncomfortable and violent times ahead. What I'm referring to specifically is West Point Military Academy. I read this morning, to my dismay, that they've changed their mission statement. It used to contain the words duty, honor, country. No longer. How can those no longer be part of the creed, the motto? Duty, honor, country. Who did this? Who made this change? Why did they do it? In my belief, my understanding, it's pretty obvious. They need to destroy the United States military. They need to change it from something that it was into something new. A couple of years ago, I found a picture of an officer who was at graduation at West Point, and he flipped his cover, his hat, and showed the inside of it to the camera, and it said, had a note in it. It was written with large writing. It said, "I am a communist," or "I'm communist." In other words, he's a communist officer in the U.S. Army. I think we've seen plenty of that type of shit from unsavory characters like Vindeman, Lieutenant Colonel Vindeman. We've seen a lot from General Millie Vanilli. We've seen a lot from these fucking people. I have a very good friend of mine who was a West Point graduate. You know, he told me some interesting stories about that place from the late 70s. In any event, here we are. Think about the great generals that have led the military in times of war. You go way back through history, but you know some of the huge names like General Patton, General Eisenhower, Douglas MacArthur. You think about them and wonder, you know, what would they think of West Point removing duty, honor, and country from their motto, from their mission statement? You see what they're doing? They're stealing our country piece by piece. The same way in Washington, D.C., as well as other cities where they're taking down statues. They're removing plaques that honored people in the past. They're removing our history. That is, folks, our identity. It is our traditions. You know, not all history is easy. Not all history is comfortable. It's funny how these people think it should be, though. And the way they go about making themselves comfortable is by making everyone else uncomfortable. Like these little protests, I'm sure whatever has happened at West Point is a consequence, a result of someone else saying they didn't like what was happening. They didn't like that motto. They didn't like a mission statement that seemed so simple and patriotic. Right? It made them uncomfortable. So what do? They protest and make everyone else uncomfortable. And the more I think about that's what protesting is about, it's very frustrating that anyone even fucking falls for it. Think about it, folks. What do protesters do? They scream, they yell, they chant. Why should anyone give a fuck? Why should they care? Why should they bend? Why should they give in? Why should they change the way they live their life? Because other people are yelling. Well, who cares? Let them yell. No. Their yelling must represent even more people than what we see. No, actually, we're finding out that corporations and rich sponsors hire protesters to go scream, yell, chant, and even get arrested. They get paid big money for it because they're influencing someone, making it seem like they're more important, more powerful than they are. So they make other people uncomfortable so that their discomfort is gone. So someone's going to be uncomfortable, them or you. We're going to let communism take over this country, or are we going to make the other side very uncomfortable and keep our traditions, our culture, our laws, our nation? This is where we are at. It's hit the fan, folks. A lot of faith, a lot of belief, a lot of trust has already been lost in the military, the Pentagon. A lot of trust is gone already. If there's any left, this isn't going to help. If there's any left, this is not going to help a bit. So the question is, right, what are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? Well, as far as I'm concerned, West Point, there's nothing I can do about it, and I will not protest any louder than this. My point is to wake people up. To wake them up, tell them to get ready, and then tell them to take action. The time's going to come. In West Point, the tradition's there. You know, got trouble, folks. How about VMI? Virginia Military Institute, was it? The Citadel? Their job is to destroy America, folks. That's what leftists do. And look at what they're doing. get yourself prepared because chance favors the prepared mind. Semper Fi, Godspeed.